Welcome back, Cat 37 CATIA surfacing class. We're going to cover how to create offsets. All right, so let's go ahead and download the CATIA file. And open it. All right, so here we have the assignment. Whoa, it looks like a windshield on a vehicle. All right, so let's walk through the tutorial. Okay, so we're going to learn how to create an offset. Okay, so we're going to offset a surface. It's got to be in one direction, right? Or the opposite direction. And we're going to type in a length. Okay, so we're going to take this surface, which looks similar to a windshield, and we're going to offset it 200 millimeters. And we'll talk about some of the smoothing options. And we can also offset multiple ones, right? And also flip the direction. Okay, so let's go ahead and start the tutorial. All right, so let's go ahead and insert our own geoset. Insert geoset, my geoset. All right, so we're going to use the offset command. Let me go ahead and reset my toolbars. Reset it. Toolbars, restore. Okay. Restore them back to the original position, the default position. All right, so here's offset. It's below the extrude. Remember how we did revolve on the previous YouTube video? So it defaults back to this, or defaults to this icon and not extrude. But we're not going to do extrude, cancel. Okay, so offset is right below the extrude command. So let's go to offset. And we're going to offset this surface. Offset the surface. And it's going to go in the direction that you see this red arrow. I know it's a little hard to see, but we have this red arrow pointing in this direction. Okay, so we're going to go with 200 millimeters. 200. And let's get a preview. And there it is. Okay, so it's going to go in the direction of the red arrow. I can always click the arrow to flip the direction, hit preview. There it is, going in the opposite direction. So you can click on the red arrow or hit the reverse button to flip it and reverse it, right? So there it is. Okay, sometimes I have to bring this up. Let's go to the lecture notes. When you offset a surface, the surface quality is not as good as the original one, so it does degrade as you offset further outward or in the opposite direction. Okay, so the further you offset a surface, you lose some of the quality of the surface. Think of like you have an old resume, right? From 5 years ago, and you keep making copies of it, and then it starts degrading, right? Visually, your copy of a copy of a copy of your resume. If you go to a copier or go to Office Depot and make copies of an old resume, it starts to look a little fuzzy or grayish in the background. Same idea. So that's why we have smoothing options to clean it up a little bit, but it's not always going to be as clean as the original one. All right, so let's go back. Okay, so as I pull on this and keep offsetting, it's going to degrade. It's not going to be as smooth. As you can see, it's not going to be as clean as the original one. And it may get to a point where it'll give you an error message. Now this surface is pretty smooth, but if it had a lot of turns and twists, it will eventually clash within itself. Okay, so this one's okay, but you can see how the surface is just starting to degrade the further I pull outward, right? As you can see. If this was the shape of a wave, for example, and you keep offsetting, it's going to degrade even further, okay? A lot quicker. Okay, let's go back to 200 millimeters. Okay, there it is. All right, so We can also go back and make multiple copies. Let's double click on offset. Hey, first, before we do multiple copies, do you want to go in both directions, both sides, right? And preview. So it'll create an offset in 2 directions. Hey, do you want multiple copies? Yeah, so you have that option of multiple copies and preview, or I should hit OK. Hey, I want to make multiple copies at 200 millimeter increments or spacing. Let's go up to 5 and go to, do you want to create a separate geoset for the new ones? Sure, or you can just turn it off. It's going to create a separate geoset for the new copies. And OK. There it is. Okay, so it did create a separate geoset for the new copies. And these are the first 2 offsets, right? In each direction. All right, so let's go back. Let's go back and double click on the offset. Okay, you have this smoothing option, right? So as I mentioned before, the offsets will degrade. Let me go ahead and cancel this and let me hide the multiple copies, the extra copies. I'm going to right click hide, right? They're in the background, as you can see in the no-show layer. Okay, so if I go back, double click. So as the surface starts to degrade, you want to smooth it out. So you can automatically let CATIA smooth it out, or you can set your deviation. So how much do you want it to deviate from the original shape? So in order to smooth out the surface, you need to sacrifice accuracy. So it better not be as an accurate complete offset. So if this is 200 millimeters, so the offset is 200. You know, as it offsets every point on the surface at 200, this is the result. But you can smooth it, right? You can let it automatically smooth. But now the distance of each point offsetting 200 millimeters is going to not be exact. It might be 199.999 millimeters. So this is where you set the deviation if you want to set it yourself. Okay, so if I go to manual, I'm going to say, hey, okay, I know every point that offsets off of this surface to create the new one. It's not going to be exactly 200 millimeters. So I can deviate plus or minus 0.1 millimeter. So it can be 199.9 for some areas, right? Okay, so you have to sacrifice accuracy to get that smoothness, okay? All right, so typically you don't have to smooth unless you're dealing with a complex surface. Something as simple as this, you would leave alone. But when you start dealing with complex surfaces and you're trying to offset, and it's not wanting to offset, it's turning red because it's too complex to offset, then you have to start going in here and start smoothing things out. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and manually deviate. I think there is a limit as to how high you can go on the deviation. Let me try 1, see if it allows it. Yep. Let me try 10. Preview. Oh, it does accept 10, okay. So even though it looks smooth, as I deviate further out, I am losing out on the accuracy of 200, well, in this case now, 2,657 millimeters constant offset. Let's see how far I can deviate. Let's go 100. I thought there would be a limit, but it looks like it keeps accepting it. Okay, so, all right, so it's up to you depending on what you're modeling. If you want to smooth and deviate quite a bit from the constant offset, seems like it's a nice smooth offset. Okay, so if I turn off the offset, let's see what it looks like. No, or the smoothing. Hey, no smoothing, none. And preview. That actually looks kind of similar. Oh, actually, if you go here, you start seeing as you go here, you can see some of the degrading of the surface in this area. Okay, so you do see the surface kind of start degrading in this area here. All right, so enough about offset. End of tutorial. Let's go ahead and save it. Actually, let me go back to the 200 and I'll remove smoothing. Okay, it looks a lot cleaner. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and save, file, save as, and go to complete. But I wanna save it my flash drive or on my desktop folder. Once again, offset complete. Let me leave it as offset number 1 and save. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything. Let's go back. So we did offset, and it does talk about smoothing it out, right? Also, we do have a second tutorial. My mistake. So I thought we were done. So let's move on to the second part. Okay, so we do have a second part. So let's continue on with this video. Okay, so we do have a second file to offset. And actually we have more, quite a few files. Okay, so let's go back. Okay, so let's go to offset number 2. Maybe I forgot to include that in the zip folder. So okay, we can just grab it from here. Let's go ahead and open the next one. All right, so this is going to be tougher to offset. Okay, so cool. We do have something that's going to degrade quite a bit and give us an error message. All right, so something like this is very common in automotive and aerospace where you're looking at a corner, maybe a corner of the center console or some interior part, maybe the end of a car seat, for example, or car cushion, or the dash. Okay, so something like this is very common to find in aerospace or automotive. So let me go ahead and insert my geoset. Okay, so let's go ahead and offset this. Now notice it's made up of a bunch of different patches. Okay, so it took quite a bit of work. Let's go into the background. Here's the original surfaces. So these were done as separate patches. So these surfaces were created as individual surfaces and then they were all joined together. Okay, so those patches were joined to make what we currently see here, right? So as you can see, here's the join. So it joined all these surfaces that we have here in the background that are now currently hidden. All right, so, and we'll be creating our own later on in our final project for this class. All right, so my geoset. Okay, so I'm going to offset the join 1. Okay, so let's go to offset. Let's offset join number 1. Okay, and we're going to offset outward. So we have the red arrow pointing outward. So let's go with, let's try 10 millimeters, see if it accepts 10 millimeters. So I'm just going to guess here a number, guesstimates. See, I'm going to try and get it to fail. Let's see if 10 millimeters work. 10 millimeters works. Okay, so let's hit preview. There's the error message. Like, nope. Having trouble. It's like, hey, do you want the result? I'm like, yeah, let's see what happens. So it's telling you, hey, user, CATIA user, we can offset this part of it, right? But we cannot offset these two patches. Okay, so you can either accept it or refuse it, right? So you can either cancel out and say, no, I don't want this. Okay, so you can cancel out of it. Let's try it again. Let's offset again. So we're going to offset this entire join. This time let's try 1 millimeter. See if it accepts 1 millimeter. Preview. Oh, and we're still having problems. Hey, do you want to accept the results? Yeah, sure, why not? And we're still having the same problem. And again, this is very common when you have a lot of patches like this. Okay, so it's saying, hey, do you want to remove some of these patches? Like, yeah, I can remove them. Sure, why not? I can just remove them. And you can just accept the consequences and say, okay, see, it removed those 2 patches that it would not offset. Let me go back and say, hey, you know what? Let me try a 0.1 millimeter. 0.1 millimeter. And preview. Okay, now it seems to be giving us something. It's still giving us the same error. Okay, so we're going to say no. It's like, hey, you got to make some changes. You got to accept something. Okay, let me see if I can smooth it. Okay, so I'm going to go with automatic smooth. See if it'll give me a 0.1 millimeter offset and preview. And this time it did work, right? So we got lucky. It did do that 0.1 millimeter offset if we accept automatic smoothing. So notice how it degrades here at this corner. It's degrading. It's like, yeah, we're smoothing it out, but it's not going to be a nice constant offset. Okay, so close. So that was the warning. Hey, double check your surface. You know, maybe this is not what you're looking for, but this is the best we can do for you, right? So we still have the original surface at the bottom, the new one on top. Okay, and hit OK. Okay, let's go back to offset. See if we can go 1 millimeter. And preview, and it'll probably reject it. No, it did accept it. So it did accept the 1 millimeter. Sorry for my surprise. Yep, so the automatic smoothing is working for us, but then again, notice how it's deviating from the 1 millimeter constant offset. So it's doing an automatic smoothing. Let's see if we can go any further out. Let's try 5. And preview. Yeah, it keeps giving us the offset, but it keeps degrading in this area. Let's try 10. Sorry for my surprise. I'm actually surprised the smoothing is working out, and it keeps working. Okay, let's go ahead and close. We'll stop at 10 millimeters with automatic smoothing. But notice how the surface here is degrading. It may be acceptable, it may not. You may accept the consequences here, this offset, and then later go on and repatch this area. You can remove this area and regenerate the surface. And it takes a lot of work, and that's where you become a great surfacer, right? In CATIA or Alias, when you can go in and clean up these bad areas. You have to like trim off some of the areas and start recreating the surface, and that's where you become a surfacing expert. Okay, so there it is. Now later on we're going to talk about analysis. Might as well give you a preview. If you want to see how good a quality of surface you have, you can use zebra stripes or neon lights. And we can also use the porcupine analysis, which we're going to cover in a way later video after we're done with all the tutorials. Okay, but just to give you a preview, if you're working in an automotive company, studio department especially, you want to check out what the surface looks like. So one thing you can do is go to lights. So go to view, lighting, and turn on the neon lights, or some refer to it as zebra stripes. And the zebra stripes will give you an idea of how good or bad a quality your surface is. Okay, so you want nice, clean neon lights like you see on the sphere here. And okay. All right, so this is very common. You're going to be at work and you're going to turn on the neon lights and look for problems with the reflection. Okay, so next time you're in traffic, driving under a tunnel, right? Like for example, the tunnel that goes under the LA airport, and you look at the way the lights reflect off of cars as they're driving through the tunnel, you can get a nice idea of how clean the surfaces are on that vehicle as it's driving through a tunnel with lighting, right? It looks almost like neon lighting. Let me turn off this, or let me hide this offset. Okay, so look how it looks a lot cleaner here. But the original surface is not that clean in this area. See how this neon light all of a sudden stops? See how it breaks here? That tells me it's not a smooth transition from this surface to this one. So that tells me that we don't have curvature continuity. So if you looked at our continuity lecture, you can tell by the light reflection what type of continuity you have. So here we have a nice smooth transition. So it looks here like we have nice tangent and maybe even curvature continuity as you go from this patch to this one. But as we go from this one to this one, see how it zigzags? We're starting to lose curvature continuity here. Over here it's good. Okay, so transitioning from this patch to this one, we have good continuity as far as the surface continuity. But here it's starting to fall apart. Once this light breaks off, bam, we've lost curvature continuity and maybe even tangent continuity. Okay, so the light reflection will tell you a lot about the surface quality. Okay, so that's the reason as we're offsetting, this area starts to degrade because this is not a smooth transition. And whoever modeled this, I believe, did it intentionally to show you what happens when you try to offset a surface of poor quality. Okay, so it's okay if the neon lights zigzag or change direction, but once it breaks away, right, like it does up here, see how the light reflection breaks off and then it continues on elsewhere? That's a bad sign right here. Okay, so later on we'll be talking more about analysis of curves and surfaces. We're doing an analysis for curvature continuity, tangent continuity, point continuity, etc. And again, that'll be covered in a later video. All right, so let's continue on with this tutorial. See if we missed anything. Okay, so we did an offset and it kept degrading on us, so we did the automatic smooth, but there's only so much smoothing will do. You want to take the original parent surface and clean that up first before you start doing offsets. All right, so as you can see, if it's not offsetting the entire surfaces, you can sacrifice some of the patches and remove them, and you're going to have to recreate it. But it's actually better if you can fix the original surface. Clean that up before you're doing your offset. All right, so let's go on to the next one. Okay, we have an offset 4. We'll come back to this one when we do our analysis, so we're not going to cover this one. Okay, so let's go ahead and open it anyway. Let's open this file. So offset number 4. Okay, so here it is again. We have the neon lights turned on, and that'll give us an idea of the quality of the surface. Okay, so this tutorial is meant to do an analysis and just to, let's see if I can find the analysis. So here is the analysis toolbar. It's actually on. It should be somewhere down here. Let's take this out. Here it is. Okay, so here is the analysis toolbar. Okay, so you can analyze curves, surfaces using these tools. So this is the analysis toolbar, but we will cover this in a later video. All right, so we're going to end this video. Okay, let's go back to our other CATIA file. We're going to ignore this tutorial. Go back to this one, and we're going to go ahead and save our work. Okay, so File, Save As. Don't save it in your Downloads folder. I'm going to save it to my desktop, creating surfaces, and offset, and complete. And save. All right, so that's the end of this video. See you in the next one.